evening viewers and welcome to the Art with World. I am your host ARSHAD Waheed. Our guest today is Dr. Waheed Ahmed. Dr. Waheed Ahmed is one of the most distinguished poets of Pakistan and he is a novelist as well. 5 collections of his poetry have been published and he has also published 2 novels. He was awarded Presidential Award of Tamgha Imtiaz in 2022. Thank you very much, Dr. Waheed Sahab.
Thank you very much for having me here, Arshad Sahab. It's always a pleasure to talk to an intellectual of your stature.
Before we start our discussion, I'll talk about your books as well, which are just lying here. But one of the things which I want to discuss with you is at the beginning of our discussion, you started writing at the age of 19, as far as I remember. I was reading your profile, and that must be your time when you were in a medical college.
Yes.
I remember the times of educational institutions of 70s and 80s, and they were vibrant with so many intellectual discussions, discourse, poetry, art, literature, other art forms, and especially professional institutions as well, and particularly medical college. Would you share with our viewers of your times when you were a student and the literary environment around you at that time?
Great. It's a very interesting question. And since you are also a doctor and a professional.
Just so by training.
Yeah. It is you can say a paradox or a very pleasant, surprise. You can say that most of the professional institutions are seen by the people as very dry type of institutions, but the reality is other way around. I have seen that in these professional colleges and universities like medical universities and engineering universities, there has always been a big group of intellectuals and writers and people belonging to fine arts. Although the people think that these dry people, they only read their books, on medicine and engineering. But I was also astonished when I got the admission in medical college. There was a big group of writers there. Dr. Iftikhar Faisal, I was there, Javed Anwar was there, Hussain Abid, Saqib Nadeem, Abdal Bela, all these. Many of them are very renowned writers. Yeah. And besides, writers, there were singers, there were dancers, there were painters, the full spectrum of fine arts. And I started my writing poetry in 1978, when I was 19 years of age. And since then I am writing, and same goes for engineering universities. For example, UET Lahore. If you go there, their literary society is so vibrant. Similarly, you go to other, like you were studying in Nishtar Medical College, same goes for Nishtar Medical College or other institutions. So, it is a very, very pleasant surprise, and again I would say more or less like a paradox that the professional people, they are more inclined towards, it may be a reaction as well to get pleasure by writing poetry.
Maybe reaction against parents who force them bright students to only medical college or engineering university at that time.
You are right. And I still remember that although we were very young at that time, we were teenagers.
Yeah.
But we were, you can say, writers which were recognized by the literary circles and Halka Arbab-e-Zawq and other literary institutions. They were very fond of us, medical students. So, it is really, I cherish those moments.
Yeah. And I think there was also definitely some contribution of those times there was an environment in 60s and 70s. I mean, generally society was very vibrant. There were new experiments in literature, political discourse as well. And as I was just reading your profile, you started getting published in literary journals of those times, like Fanoon. And I remember those times. I mean, there were many literary journals like Nukush, Fanoon, Aurak by Dr. Wazir Agha, then there was Seep
and
Savera, Adbe Latif. And it used to be a great honor for a young poet or fiction writer to be published in those journals.
Sure.
And those journals had a great contribution into our literary environment. Don't you think it has changed now?
Yes, I think nostalgia is the word. I really feel honored that I was published extensively in the renowned literary journal Fanoon,
which was by Ahmed Kasmi.
Yes, which was edited by Kasmi Saab, and he very kindly published. I think 90% of my poems were published in Fanoon, and I have had a great opportunity to meet him in detail in his office at Lahore. You are very right that at that time the literary journals that you named, they were very popular, and besides poets, the public at large, they were fond of these magazines, and they would go and purchase these magazines from the shops. And we in fact waited for the new journal when it was coming. And one day I was shocked when I went to a very big store here in Islamabad, and I requested them to give me Fanoon. And the boy who was their salesman, he said, "What is Fanoon?" And I was really shocked. I said, "Look at him. Fanoon is one of the leading, So there is a decline. There is a decline, overall decline in the society. And this decline is not in vacuum. It always has multifarious, factors. And literature is also one of the casualties.
Okay, we'll discuss in detail on this later. Maybe we are not aware of contemporary things. I mean, you and I being old school of thought.
Yeah.
There might be something new happening around. You started writing poetry, and one of your very famous poem is Hum Shair Hote Hain, We the Poets.
Yeah.
It's very good, it's very rhythmic, very beautiful. At the same time, it looks like a manifesto of poets.
Yes, it is called the national anthem of poets.
So, what do you think, what is poetry in your, what you understand of it, I mean?
It is the most sublime way of expression, that's it. In a nutshell, I would say that it is the most sublime way of expression. And I think that there are two elements of poetry. One is thought and the other is meter. I cannot imagine poetry without meter, In my opinion, Urdu poetry starts with ghazal and it ends with free verse. There is no, there is a definite boundary around it. And the other thing that I believe is that poetry cannot be created. It can be conceived only. It comes like revelation. I believe in it. That we call Ahmed in our slang. And then we make few fine tuning or something like that. Poetry cannot be made. It just comes out of the air from the horizon. I believe in it very, 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 very religiously. Now coming to the poem, yes, Hum Shair Hote Hain. I'm really honored that it has been so widely accepted and appreciated by not only the writers but also the other friends. And it also just I was sleeping and I woke up and I started writing this poem. So this is the difference between a poem and a piece of prose writing. Poetry comes automatically, you know, without it is an effortless thing, whereas prose is created.
I tend to agree with you, but maybe there's a lot of things behind a poem. Your experiences, your study about various things in life, and your thinking pattern which might be rhythmic. I mean, everyone cannot be a poet. And
yes, you are right. You know, these experiences, they go on gathering, accumulating inside the poet and churning all the time in his mind.
yeah,
And then these experiences, they are absorbed, assimilated by the poet, and then they take the shape of a poem automatically. That is what I was saying.
and you said that Urdu poetry starts with ghazal and ends with free verse.
Yeah.
And you chose free verse, I guess.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah, you didn't write ghazals.
I wrote ghazals. It is again a very interesting thing that you will surprised to note that in fact my training is in the field of ghazal, you know. And I still believe that for a nazm writer,
Yeah.
the education of ghazal is very important if you write in Urdu, because ghazal has a very, very deep foundations in our system, in our culture. It has a long history of more than 700 years. And it is just like, you know, classical music. In classical music, if you know classical music, you can sing songs. Poems are like songs, you know. Ghazal is like a thought or like a rag. You derive poem from the nazm from ghazal. This is my personal thought, and most of my friends who write nazm, who are hardcore nazm writers, they disagree. They say no. Nazm is altogether different. It is a watertight compartment, altogether divorced from ghazal. But I don't think that there is a line of cleavage between ghazal and nazm. You know, if you have the flavor of ghazal in nazm, it makes your nazm more potent, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had great poets who wrote ghazals, and I mean, how can one, Ghalib and Mir Taqi Mir Sahab and all these classic.
Even modern poets like REHMAN also wrote ghazal.
I don't think
Majid, few.
Yeah. But
Majid Amjad wrote.
Yeah.
Aftab Iqbal Shamim wrote.
Yeah. But I think there was also a discussion, and you may enlighten us on that, that ghazal had perhaps exhausted its potential to explain inner selves of modern man, our contemporary life, and poem or nazms offer more opportunities for a poet or a writer or someone who is trying to write poems or ghazals. But poems often offer more opportunities to express the world around and maybe inner self of human beings in that particular environment.
Yes, that is the. I think that is the basic question, and I would like to give my viewpoint in a bit detail, if you kindly allow me.
Sure. We are here to hear from you.
So nice of you. So far as the downfall of ghazal, you can say, is concerned, I think that ghazal has still got the potential if it is written, you know, in a proper manner. The reality is that ghazal has been written so extensively in 19th century by our that we call asatiza, by our senior poets, that one feels really astonished the way they wrote.
Yeah.
Then came few ghazal writers who gave a turn to ghazal, and they wrote modern ghazal like Adim Hashmi and that era. After that, most of the ghazal writers they couldn't contribute much in this field, although there is a big scope for writing ghazal. Now coming to Nazm, you were right. Nazm is in fact a universal genre. It has always been the most popular way of writing, starting right from the dawn of civilization, and even before, I think, when there was no language, people used to write, used to create poems, and there was an oral tradition of reading out poems. And then came the main breakthrough in 800 BC, when Homer wrote the most potent poems, Iliad and Odyssey. And still, I think these two poems are the most beautiful poems, and there is no parallel to. Now, this Nazm is written each and every country. It is a universal genre. You go to Latin America or America and up to Australia, it is written everywhere, whereas the ghazal is written mostly in this subcontinent, South
Persian tradition.
Yeah. So, it has always been a popular genre. It is a popular way of writing, and it will remain as the most popular genre in poetry always. I believe in it.
And how about this prose poem?
Well, most of the people, when they talk about me, they say that perhaps I am against prose poetry. No, I am not. I am not against any type of writing. One may write in any form, but as I have already told, that in my opinion, my definition of poetry is that it is always in meter. For me, you can say that I am handicapped, I cannot write in prose, I cannot write poetry in prose. This is my handicap. So, I cannot write prose poetry, but I read prose poetry, whereas I do not call it poetry in the strict classical sense. For that matter, I think I am an orthodox type of person.
You just referred to Homer and Odyssey and Iliad. I mean, they are beautiful poems, beautiful epics, if we can say. We also have poetry like Warishas here, which is long poems. These poems are kind of have a chronological order, sequence of events. And how would you explain that when you say that poetry is just revelation? It's more than that. It's a lot of hard work done during writing those poems. And there is a sequence of events which cannot be just a revelation. It would be a very conscious effort to write that.
You are right. I would again repeat that a cumulative experience, is always churning in the mind of the poet. And the experiences, when they transform into poetry, they are not the same. Now, coming to Homer, these are epics. Epics have a different type of flavor, because it also explains a story in a chronological order, as you said. So, I was talking about myself. When I write poetry, I believe that there is a predominant, you can say, a power of revelation type of a power, whereas many of the people, they write poem very mechanically. So, they have their own way of writing.
Would you share with us any one of your poem?
Okay, now I will read out my poem, one of the poems. सधारत को यही गम था कि बरगद पेड़ है और उसके नीचे उसके साए के अलावा और कुछ भी उग नहीं पाता।
वाह,
उसे उम्मीद थी कि कुछ ना कुछ तो उग ही आएगा, मगर थक हार कर खुद ही उगा और इस कदर फैला कि एक एक शाख एक एक दौर के सर पर मुसल्लत थी।
वाह,
सधारत पेड़ ने हर एक सदी में बीज फेंके हैं,
हाँ,
जो हर उस घर में उगते हैं जहाँ सोए हुए बच्चे सुकून से मुस्कुराते हैं।
वाह, वाह, ब्यूटीफुल।
And if you kindly allow me, I can translate it into
Sure,
English.
sure. I was just going to request you to, for
Okay.
our viewers who are watching.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Siddhartha.
Yeah.
Siddhartha knew that the banyan is a tree and nothing grows underneath it except its own shadow. But he still hoped that something will definitely come up. But in the end, he himself grew and grew so much that a single branch engulfed an entire period of time. The Siddharth tree has spread its seeds to every century that grow in every home where the kids fast asleep smile in peace.
Beautiful poem.
So nice of you.
This poem reminds me of a very particular feature of your poetry, and that is use of local metaphors, local personalities, I mean of subcontinent, South Asia. If we go to our, mainstream politics, most of our metaphors are from Persian world, even weather and birds and all that. This reference to Siddhartha is not very common in our poetry. I remember Aslam Ansari has written a very famous poem.
Famous poem.
Yeah, and you have written that. And in addition to that, I was just reading your poem, Hum Shair Hote Hain. You have also referred to local books and traditions,
Mythologies.
and mythology. So I think this is a great contribution. So I would like to hear from you. Was it your conscious decision to relate your poetic diction with the environment around you, or it just happened as a revelation maybe?
First of all, let me share with you that I am deeply, deeply impressed by Gandhara art. There is some spiritual type of relation. I go to Texla so frequently. I think hundred of time. Mostly I am present in Texla here and there. So I have an attachment with that environment, you know.
Yeah.
That is one thing. Secondly, coming to local metaphors and similes and local way of expression, I think that a writer, a poet, he should write in an indigenous way, instead of writing things taken from here and there, borrowed type of expression. I don't think it's it should be like that. I mostly follow the tradition of Waheed Ahmed in poetry, and in fact I was inspired by him when I was a school student.
You lived in Sahiwal as
Yes,
well?
sir.
Oh, yeah.
From 1971 to 74, I was in Sahiwal, in Freetown, Sahiwal, where Waheed Ahmed was living, and I saw him 4 years continuously. I met him, I read his first book, that was Shab-e Rafta, and I wrote all that book with my pen also. We were taught that book in the school. So Waheed Ahmed was totally, you know, I was possessed by him, you can say. He still lives inside me. The hallmark of his poetry is that his thought is indigenous, belongs to the soil where he was born, and same thing I took from him. And I firmly believe that a poet of Pakistan should write the culture where he is living in, you know, instead of writing. about other things alien to him. Why should he write when he is not living there? So, and fortunately, we have a very, you can say, an enviable sort of a history. This Indus civilization is very ancient, and we have so much, so many stories here, so many things to write. So there is no need to borrow metaphors and similes from outside. And same goes for other poets that you have been traveling extensively. You were in the UK and here. The great poets, they always write about their culture, and the same goes also for the prose writing. We very frequently talk about Garcia Marquez. He always writes about Colombia, where he was living. He doesn't write about America or England or something. He writes about his native place.
Yeah, Macondo, he says, is a given name.
Yes, and the English writers, they write about the Midland and Scotland. So a Pakistani writer should write about Pakistan. That is very simple.
So you met many times with Waheed Ahmed Sahab?
Twice a day for 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. It is an honor for me. I met him, I shook hands with him, I took lunch with him, I talked to him. But at that time I was so young that I really, how could a small kid, I was just 12 years of age. So I always would say, Assalamu alaikum, sir. And he would very kindly say, Wa alaikum salam. And he used to pass in front of our house twice, daily. And then my teacher told me that this is the man of future. There were visionaries at that time, and they told me that this is the man. And I really, I don't know how many. I'm always thinking about that person. He lives inside me.
I can understand. Anything interesting you would like to share with our viewers about Waheed Ahmed?
Yes, he was totally. He was a very different sort of a person, and I still remember that I always would think that this person is. He is a different type of a person, always a very mysterious type with an aura of light around him, and riding on the bicycle very slowly, thin, lean, and with round spectacles. Always thinking something, introvert, absorbed in himself. Like a mystic. I always imagine him as if he was a mystic, Totally a different person. I saw a mystic incarnate in his personality. And I have yet to see a person who was so special as he was. Great person and a total poet in classical sense.
And who were the other poets other than Waheed Ahmed you liked?
Well, there is a long list, but mainly I am impressed by Waheed Ahmed. Then of course our seniors like Tasadduq Hussain Khalid, and then Noon Mim Rashid, Meera Ji, then Akhtarul Iman, Akhtar Hussain Jafri, Aftab Iqbal Shamim. These are all, they have contributed a lot. And the modern poem that we read in 2024 is, in fact, it has been created and shaped by these great people. And all of them, they have their own environment and their own way of writing, and all are great people. There is a world. You read their books. Every book is just like a word. They are great people.
I have found in your poetry, you've also mainly used local words, local vocabulary. It's a kind of departure from our tradition, which was quite Persianized in many ways. And that is also, I think, you share with Waheed Ahmed Sahab. He also used the local vocabulary. And
in fact, I have seen that most of the people, they use the same rut which has already been created over centuries. Right? For example, ghazal writers, they tend to write in a very, very classical way.
yeah.
Same goes for nazm writers. Now, one of the greatest poets, that is Noon Mim Rashid,
Yeah,
he was
I'm huge fan
totally
of him.
Persianized,
Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
because of his
That was, I was just trying, I wanted to point out the difference between Waheed Ahmed and
Yes.
Rashid Sahab.
Now coming to Mira ji, he was other way
Yeah,
around,
Yeah.
and Waheed Ahmed was a blend of these two type of more inclined towards local
Yeah.
similes and metaphors. My selection of words is, I don't think it is my own choice, or it is something, you know, I tried it by plan. No, it is by default. And as I've already told, that a local writer should, a writer should write the culture where he is living in. He should use the vocabulary that is used by the people at large, that has been taught to him. Instead of writing borrowed things, he should write, you know, about his own culture, and that's what I do.
Yeah. Would you share another poem with us?
Sure. यूं है के उन्वान इसका है कि यूं है के कभी कहकहा टूटा सांस की हिलती टहनी से,
Wow, beautiful.
और कभी कहकहा टूटा सांस की हिलती टहनी से, कभी आंखें चूरा चूरा होकर बह निकलीं, कभी लफ्ज़ हंसी की गर्दबाद में उड़ते रहे, कभी सिसकारी ने आंच भरी तो पिघल गए, मैं छलक गया तो लफ्ज़ भी सारे छलक गए।
Beautiful.
फिर एक रोज़ मैं हंस ना सका तो मिसरा हुआ, हंसमुख लफ्ज़ों की बज़्म हुई, और एक रोज़ जब रो ना सका या ज़ब्त किया तो नज़्म हुई।
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So this poem is about the genesis, you know, about the creation of a poem, how the poem is created.
It also reminds me of Mir, who says, "Dardo gam kitne ki
ये जमा तो दीवान किया, सुभान अल्लाह।
and so much misery and pain, and then
Yes.
he could do this
Yes.
collection of poems.
In English, it would go like this, and this translation has been done by Mr. Abid Raza, who is a renowned
Yeah.
poet and lives abroad in US. So it is. Sometimes laughter broke off the quivering twig of a breath. Sometimes eyes were shattered and then gushed out. Sometimes words kept floating in the dust storm of a laugh and melted when a sob flamed up. So when I spilled, all the words spilled too.
Beautiful.
Then one day, when I couldn't laugh, a verse came into being. A congregation of jolly words assembled. And one day, when I restrained myself and couldn't cry, the poem materialized.
Wow.
So that's it.
Beautiful. Well, I would like to hear more from you, but I think we also need to discuss your novels as well. So, as you know that Urdu has a very strong and very rich tradition of poetry, right? And we can be really proud of our great poets from classical period, even up to now. But now I have seen that the genre of novel is also gaining some space in our literary scene. You are an accomplished poet, and then you started writing novel as well. So what inspired you in the first place, and then we'll discuss your novel.
I think there are certain stories that you cannot narrate in poetry. Every this field has its limitations. Mostly I write stories in my poems.
Yeah.
And people usually say that you write stories in poetry and you write
Poetry novels.
Yeah. It was one fine morning that I conceived an idea of Zeno,
Yeah.
and it started developing into my mind, and it took a shape of a story. And I realized that this story cannot be confined in the genre of poem. And the idea was most cherished idea that I always have in my mind, and I have also expressed it in many of my poems as well. And then I started this writing this novel in 1989. I wrote this novel in 5 years,
Yeah.
from 89 to 93. So the motive behind was not just to write novel. Many of the people say that just for the sake of writing novel. No, it was an idea. It came by itself, and it could only be written in the shape of a novel. That's why I wrote this novel.
You have titled your novel as Zeno, and if I go through the story in this novel, it doesn't refer to those famous Zeno characters in history, but it's a imaginative. It is imagination of yours, a character you built who was contemporary to Aristotle and Alexander. Yeah. It's a very fascinating story. I mean, you have broken the traditions of social realism, which has a very logical sequence of events. Now, what you have done here is that there is a character who is accompanied by Alexander. He comes to northern area of Pakistan, and then he is buried and there is snowstorm. And then he reappears in our times in 20th century, I guess, or 21st century. 21st century. And then he deals with the things around, and he interacts with people around in our time. So, I would like to ask you, I mean, your experiment in this technique of novel writing, and then the whole idea of this novel.
Okay, briefly I would go through all these questions. Coming to the first one, mostly people get confused that they think that I've taken this my character from history. Absolutely not. No, not at all. The famous Zenos, that is Zeno of Ilium and Zeno Citium and Zeno of Alia, they were not present at the time when this novel was written, in a temporal way. Both of these Zenos, they were not contemporary of Alexander at all. This Zeno is totally an imaginary character that has been created by me, and it has nothing to do with history at all. This is the first thing. Secondly, writing novel, it was really a pleasure. It was a new experience as well. It was my first experience, and the most astonishing thing that I noticed was that writing poetry is a very difficult sort of a thing, and you have to be very, very patient. And
writing novel is a difficult. Poetry is
novel. And you always have to be in a trance, always living in that story, walking with those characters all the time, talking to them, and your characters, they take you along. And so the story goes. It is just like, as if you build a a building, you know.
Yeah.
You make a PC1, you make an outline, and then you dilate upon him, and slowly and gradually the story expands, and then you finish it up, taper it down.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very wonderful experience.
Mhm.
And yes, it is also very painful that once you finish the story, still there is a hangover, and still you
Yes.
live with those characters, and it is very difficult to separate yourself from that situation. It takes a long time that you feel normal, you know. That is what I felt.
So, how about using this technique? I mean, you have treated Zeno as a phoenix. I mean,
Yes,
he
yes,
existed
yes.
at some time, then he was perished, and then he reappears. And
In fact, it was all my figment of imagination,
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
say. Some people, you know, related with Aaka Darya and other novels. I don't know why the people have the same type of parameters that it deals with the expansion of time and all that. No.
Arkadriya by Kurtaran has
Yes.
a river of fire.
Yes, we compare each and every novel with Aaka Darya. I don't know why. This is totally my own idea. And one of the factors is that I'm also a doctor, so I had an opportunity to, you are a doctor, you know that very well, how to put a life into a person who has been frozen for centuries. And there I used my medical fiction, and I tried to revitalize each and every cell of a person who was frozen, and then to bring him into life. And I used all my medical knowledge, and that medical fiction has been liked by most of the people. The idea behind was that there is a marked difference between that time and the time we are living. It is so artificial, and it's so, I mean, difficult time as compared to that. People were very, very close to nature, and when Zeno came in the second phase, he was so astonished to see the world. Oh, the time has changed, and there has been a marked development in each and every field, but the nature of human beings has not changed. It is still the same greed and same type of things are going on. Alexander had the same frame of mind as the people, G8 people have here, or other leaders, you know. So that was also the idea that Zeno, who was living about, you know, 2000 years from now, when he comes to this world, he talks to the leaders, and he finds no difference so far as the nature of the human beings is concerned.
So, who was the novelist who inspired you?
Yes, I think Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde, because
Picture of Dorian Gray.
yes, Picture of Dorian Gray was my favorite novel.
Yeah, it's
And
fantastic.
one of the reasons is that he was also a poet as well as a novelist.
Yeah.
And
He
when
was
I
a playwright as well, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
and when I read his novel Picture of Dorian Gray, The Picture of Dorian Gray, I was really impressed by the way of his writing. And then I realized that
Beautiful language.
yeah.
Yeah.
So main motive is that person, and I sometimes feel a pride in saying that I think I was the first poet in recent times who wrote novel. And after that, I paved a way for the poets to write novels. And then there was a mushroom growth of novels who was written by the poets. So in that way, this Zeno is, you know, harbinger, you can say, you know, it gave a way to the poets.
Yeah, and I think the diction you have used in this, it's quite poetic in this
Sure,
novel.
you know, when a poet writes prose, he writes in a poetic diction. Same goes for my second novel. It is also
Mundriwala.
yes.
Okay.
That I wrote in 2012.
And there is another upcoming book of poetry
Yes.
being published, you just told me.
Yes, that will be my 6th collection of poetry and my 8th book. It will be published very soon.
Great. So now, is there any other idea of writing a new novel?
Well, not at all.
Can you afford that much time and dedication and patience?
It's a very, very difficult task. You can understand it. One shouldn't take it very lightly, and particularly in our country where there are very few novels written so far as compared to rest of the world. Novel writing is a very, very serious thing, and I think it should be written very, very carefully, not casually just to write a novel.
How do you compare your contemporary times and the times when you started writing poetry and then novel in terms of reception of people towards literature, fiction and poetry?
Yes, deteriorated. The graph is coming down, I think. As we mentioned earlier in our conversation, that when we were students, there was a craze of buying books and reading novels, and there were small libraries in each and every colony, in each and every city where books were rented out, and there is no library, this type of library in the colonies now. Same goes for books. Mostly, bubble type of books are popular these days, without naming any. But writing a masterpiece is there is always a space for that. One shouldn't be one shouldn't feel disheartened by the situation. There is always time to write good things, but one thing is clear, that there has been a deterioration both in the field of writing as well as in the field of readership.
Thank you very much, Dr. Waheed sir. It was a pleasure having you in our show.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. So, thank you viewers for watching us. See you next Sunday, same time.